Bismillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barik wa salli wa sallim alayhi. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is a short video, a summary if you like, of my previous longer video that I posted about Dr. Hany Atchan's methodology. It's a long 5 hours, almost 5 hours video. And so a lot of you have been asking me to post parts of that video, shorter clips from that video, in order for you guys to better understand and comprehend whatever I'm saying in that longer version. But I decided to make a standalone video, just kind of summarizing the things that I've said in that longer version. And please, I'm not going to give you any lengthy references in this video. I'm going to try and make it as short and as sweet as possible. So please, if you find something confusing in this video, go back to the original video, the longer video that I've posted last week. With this in mind, let's begin in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. It is important to establish the usul of somebody's fikr, of somebody's thought, of somebody's method that he or she uses to approach a certain intellectual paradigm. Unless and until we know the usul of somebody's discourse, we're always going to be confused about this or that in his or her methodology. I'll give you an example. For example, if I'm studying Al-Farahi, and I'm studying his exegesis of the Quran, which was, by the way, written by his student and completed by his student. And I don't know what his usul are for the way he's doing the exegesis of the Quran. What is that exegesis based upon? What is that method that he employs to exegete the Quran is based upon? I'll always be confused as to why he's saying this, or why is he saying that, or what is the dalil for this, what is the dalil for that. Sure, he might quote somebody or put forward a thesis here and there, but generally, overall, I will be confused about as to why he's saying what he's saying. And this usul is different from the English term methodology. The principles are different from methodologies because methodologies are based on the principles. It's not the other way around. A method is a practical way of implementing the theory. The usul, the principles that you have established, when you put them to task, when you put them to test on a certain text, or in whichever way you are approaching a discourse, then that's called your methodology. It's the practical side of affairs. That's the methodology. But the fikr, the usul behind the theoretical framework that you have, is really important to understand that. So Imam Farahi lists his usul, his principles, in his book called At-Takmil fi Usul At-Ta'wil. That's really the treatise for his principles. But that's not his method. You get to know about his method in his other book, which is called Al-Mufradat. It is the same with Ghulam Ahmed Pervez. If you go to Ghulam Ahmed Pervez writings, you'll find that his principles are scattered among his writings. Some of these are here, some of these are there. For example, he has a book called Maqam Hadith, in which he tells you his usul for rejecting the hadith. But his methodology is in his 4-volume work, which is called Lughat al-Quran. And so there's really a difference between the two. By looking at someone's methodology, you can often refer to their usul. You often get to know what their usul are. What are the principles on which they base their methodology? And so Dr. Hany Atchan has a methodology. And he calls this methodology the organic Quranic methodology. So let us look at it in detail, inshallah, and see what really this methodology is based on. What really this methodology has behind of it, has at the root level of it, that could be dubbed as the principle of his methodology. This is a direct copy and paste from his Facebook page. This information is also available in his videos, especially in his video on his channel, the first video in the playlist, which talks about methodology. So I'm not really writing anything from my side here. This is a direct copy paste. And this is his manhaj al-tafsir, his methodology for approaching the exegesis of the Quran. So let's first go through this. The number one step in his methodology is read the Quran, not just recite. Meaning read it intensely, concentrating on each and every word. Number two, observe intently, allowing the Quran to teach you, okay? To act on you as a software. And he explains this further in his other videos, lengthy videos, what he means by the Quran acting upon you as a software. But just to understand this point, quickly, you observe intently and you get to know about the meanings of Quranic words from within the Quran. So by intent observation, you can learn the Quran from itself. Number three, ask specific daring questions. And this is, more of a prompt thing. Number four, keep reading and observing the Quran. So you repeat the first three steps and you ask questions and you keep reading. Number five, make dua and fulfill your ibadat, especially charity. Okay, good advice. Number six, wait and do not rush. Number seven, upon zikra, upon intuition, and Dr. Hany Atchan says that zikra is like this flash of this moment of epiphany, this kind of flash in your mind when you realize something. Do not rush to accept and do not insist that you already have the final answer. So the first 6 steps are basically leading to that intuitive moment, to that flash. But you proceed to 2 more steps even after the zikra. Number 8 is confirmation and number 9 is verification. First of all, when you read into all of this, the first 6 points, these are not really points of a method, especially not points of a method that you apply to text. And Dr. Hany Atchan mentions that himself. He says that you do not apply this methodology. You do not apply this methodology to the text of the Quran in the way the Western epistemology applies hermeneutics to textual criticism. But the point is, then, what is this methodology for? And he says that this is to be applied to an individual's own self. And this is all very confusing, I know, for some people who are getting into Dr. Hany Atchan, who are wondering what Dr. Hany Atchan is about, or who are trying to discern if whether he is authentic or not, whether we should listen to him or not. This sounds confusing. But let me explain this and let me do away with the confusions, inshallah, once and for all. If you look at this methodology closely, there are 3 sections in this methodology. The first section is from point number 1 to point number 6. Second section is point 7, and then third section is points number 8 and 9. The first sections 1 to 6 tell us that one of the usul of his thought, one of the usul manhaj, is that he does not deem anything other than the Quran reliable. Because read the Quran, observe the Quran, ask questions about the things that you are reading in the Quran, keep reading it, keep reading and observing the Quran, make dua and fulfill your ibadat, obviously, and wait and do not rush. These are all points that tell us that his principle, that one of the major principles behind his methodology is that he only accepts Quran and does not accept anything else. So this should be very clear from his methodology. Number 2, zikra, point number 8. When he talks about zikra, it means that he is establishing the principle that this guidance is sought directly from the divine. It is given individually and it is sought directly from the divine. So the principle extracted from this is that Allah guides everyone individually. This can be called revelation or can be dubbed as ilham or however you want to put it. But the methodology clearly indicates that one seeks guidance directly from the divine in a very tangible manner, a zikra, something that is intellectually tangible. The third section is the falsification, and he talks about Karl Popper's falsification test. And this is tied into the concept of Abrahamic locution that he further talks about, and we will come to this later. The principle derived from this part of methodology relates directly to textual criticism and clearly denotes to a kind of inquisition which can confirm the zikra that you have already received, right? So these are the sections that his methodology is divided into. Only Quran is the reliable source of information. You should just go to the Quran and nothing else. Number 2, you should seek guidance directly from Allah, from the divine, and He will guide you. He will give you zikra. And number 3 then, you need to have a method of falsification. You really need to have something that you can confirm and verify your findings with, and that is the Abrahamic locution, the term of Abrahamic locution, and the term of divine lexicon. So now let me do away with the confusions that are surrounding Dr. Hany Atchan. This is a Wikipedia page about Quranism. Stay with me. Let's just read through it. It says Quranism or Qur'aniya is a branch of Islam. It holds the belief that traditional religious clergy has corrupted religion and Islamic guidance should be based strictly on the Quran. Islamic guidance should be based strictly on the Quran, thus opposing the religious authority of all or most of the hadith literature. Quranists believe that religious laws in the Quran are already clear and complete and can be understood without referencing outside texts. Quranists claim that the vast majority of hadith literature are fabrications and that the Quran itself criticizes the hadith, both in the technical sense and the general sense. The first part of the methodology, only Quran is the reliable source of information. This is further proven by his website, the question and answer part of his website, frequently asked questions section of his website, where he clearly says that hadith are not reliable and cannot be taken as authority, as hujjah. They, at best, can only serve to bring more evidence for an already established historical fact. That is all they are good for, the hadith. And they cannot be taken as reliable sources of information. So this is the first confusion that you guys should do away with. The first confusion, the first part of the confusion. This is really the Quranist thought that Dr. Hany Atchan is talking about. Now, the second section of the methodology, the zikra part, the receiving the guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly, individually. If we go to the tafsir section of this article, and I'm referring to the Wikipedia article, and I'm not going to any classical sources, although academics have written about the Quranists, they have talked about the Quranists, issued fatwa about the Quranists. I'm not going to any of those sources because, as you have read yourself, the Quranists, Hany Atchan included, reject all scholarship, all Muslim scholarship. And so I'm just going to a simple resource, a simple, publicly managed, open source resource of modern day, and showing you from there what the Qurani thought is, what in actuality it is. I don't think anyone can differ with this now. Nobody can say, oh, why are you calling a Sayyuti an authority, or why are you calling Kitab al-Milal wal-Nihal an authority, or why are you calling the Kitab al-Quraniyun al-Arab an authority? We don't accept their authority. Fine, don't accept their authority. But this is Wikipedia, right? So let's go to the part where it talks about tafsir. Although there are Quranist tafsir works, for the most part, Quranists don't have tafsir and they don't think that it is needed. They believe the Quran does not give anyone the authority to interpret, and Allah sends guidance individually, as they claim is said so in the Quran. They believe that Allah sends guidance individually. And when you say Allah sends guidance individually, obviously you mean to say that directly speaks to you or directly interacts with you. This is the zikra part. So let us establish, this is the second part of the confusion that you should do away with. Let us establish now that Dr. Hany Atchan is a Quranist. He's a Qurani. And you should approach him with that in mind. Once you know that he is a Qurani, that his usul are based on Qurani thought, everything else would be crystal clear for you. Why he does the exegesis of the Quran the way he does it, why he says things that he's saying, what his methodology really is. All of these things will be cleared up. This is the Qurani thought. He's not bringing anything new to the table. He's bringing his predecessors' methodology. He's bringing ideas of his predecessors. He is doing exegesis of the Quran based on the usul of the Quraniyin. And so there's nothing new and nothing to be confused about. It's as simple as that. So now that we have established this, let me, by the way, mention a very important fact. There is a consensus of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah and the mainstream Shiite upon the kufr of the Quraniyin. The Quranists are declared non-Muslims according to Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the Sunni, and the Shiite mainstreamers, both of them. There's a consensus and ijma' of the Ummah on this. So I'm not saying, somebody is issuing a fatwa or somebody else is issuing another fatwa. I'm not saying that. I'm talking about ijma', talking about the consensus. One of these fatwa, and you can look at my longer video for details and references and everything, but one of these fatwa is issued by Imam Ibn Hazm. Now I'm bringing Imam Ibn Hazm because he was a Zahiri, and the Zahiri are closest to the Quranic thought in that they also rejected everything else but just the Quran and the Sahih Hadith. So they include Sahih Hadith in their usul, in their maraja, but they did away with everything else. And in fact, they are most famous for saying this, that only the text, the nas al-qat'iyyah, only the text of the Quran and Sahih Hadith is hujjah. Anything else, everything else is to be rejected. Even rejecting the qiyas, the ta'wil and the qiyas and everything. So that is the reason I'm bringing in Ibn Hazm. Even he says, لو إن امرأ قال لا نأخذ إلا ما وجدنا في القرآن لكان كافرا بإجماع الأمة. Anyone who says we don't take anything else other than the Quran, he is a kafir. He is a non-Muslim by consensus of the ummah. I'm not the one for takfir, really. I'm not. I don't deal with this kind of thing. But it is a consensus, and that is important. That's why I'm bringing it in. I'm not talking about secluded fatwa here or secluded fatwa there. So you guys need to be extremely clear about this. If you are getting to know Hany Atchan, Dr. Hany Atchan, please know with finality that his aqaid are kufriya. What he is preaching, what he is doing with the verses of the Quran is kufr. Please notice this. And I'm going to not go into detail about this. For details, you can visit my, you can watch my previous video. So let's move on very quickly. So these were the first two sections of his methodology. Now this brings us to the last section of his methodology, the confirmation and verification part, or what he refers to as Karl Popper's falsification test. But this is a smokescreen. Don't get deceived by it. He has devised terms of divine lexicon and Abrahamic locution, and using his own methodology, he's going to do the falsification test. He's not going to do a scientific falsification test. He's not telling you to do a scientific falsification test. He's telling you to do a falsification test based on his concept of Abrahamic locution and divine lexicon. This is where his real method of textual criticism begins. So you need to understand that. And his falsification test does not rely on any scientific method or any scientifically extracted evidence. His falsification test is where he shows you how supposedly the Quran confirms his own ideas using his own method to dissect, manipulate, and distort Quranic verses. It's really the tahrif that he's doing. So please pay attention and do not get confused by this. When he repeatedly says that this is the evidence from the Quran itself, it is actually his distortion and manipulation of the language of the Quran. It is what he wants you to understand from the text. The text is not saying it, he is saying it. So it is very important to first ponder over his coining of the term divine lexicon. This is something that the Quranists have been doing for a long time. If you pick up Ghulam Ahmed Pervez's work, he's got a Quranic lexicon, Lughat al-Quran. So did Farahi. I'm not calling Farahi a Quranist, but you surely see my point. So you need to understand this about the Quranists, and you need to understand this about Dr. Hany Atchan. Divine lexicon, the term divine lexicon, is not a correct term, first of all, if you ask me. Quranic lexicon is a much better term, and I explained this in greater detail in my previous video. But this divine lexicon is basically comprises of the meanings that he has extracted using his own methodology of Abrahamic locution. That is what the divine lexicon is for Dr. Hany Atchan. So what is the Abrahamic locution? Well, first of all, he references Ahmed Bassam Saeh's book Al-Mu'jiza while talking about Abrahamic locution, and he says in his video that after reading this book, through this work by Dr. Ahmed Bassam Saeh, Dr. Ahmed, he was able to devise this method. He was able to devise the concept which he makes known as Abrahamic locution. And he translates lisan, bilisanihim, in the ayah. He translates this Arabic word as locution. In other meanings, the uslub al-kalam. And he says that in mukhtalif qisas, in various stories of the Quran, different people talk in different asalib, in different locutions. And from that, you can extract what actually some of the words of the Quran mean. There's lots of confusing stuff, really. There are smoke screens here and there, and charade and pseudo-intellectual terms are used, pseudo-academics, pseudo-scholarly terms are used here and there. But really, let's deal with it one by one. First of all, Dr. Ahmed Bassam Saeh has never talked about anything other than the miraculous nature of Quranic expression and Quranic language that Quran brought in the world of Arabs. Other than this, Ahmed Bassam Saeh doesn't talk about anything else. He's not a mufassir, he's not an exegete, he's not altering or changing theology of the Quran. He's not saying that these words do not mean what they are classically understood to mean. He's saying that the Quran expresses these words in new tarakib, in new murakkabat, in new ways. And so the language of the Quran is the Arabic language. It's not Abrahamic locution. Let me quote you. By the way, in that previous video of mine, I said that Al-Mu'jiza has not been translated, and that's true. The original book, Volume 1 and Volume 2, to the best of my knowledge, they have not been translated into English. But there is a talkhis, a summary, a précis of Volume 1 written by Ahmed Bassam Saeh himself called Mukhtasar al-Kitab Mu'jiza. That has been translated into English. Big shout out to a friend of mine on Goodreads who actually pointed this out, and she said, "Sir, what are you saying? His book has been translated." And so I was partly right, I was partly wrong. I stand corrected. The Talkhis, the Mukhtasar al-Kitab al-Mu'jiza has been translated into English, and the title is The Miraculous Language of the Quran, Evidence of Divine Origin. I urge each and every one of you to pick this up right away and go through this. This is one of the best books written on the topic. Also, if you are interested in Dr. Hany Atchan and his methodology, you should read this book and decide for yourself whether his referencing this book is right or wrong. Is it justified or is it not? Let me just quickly quote from page 20 of this book, The Miraculous Language of the Quran. On page 20, Dr. Ahmed Bassam Saeh says, "The Quran most certainly did not bring a new language separate from the Arabic language that was already in existence. And it is in precisely this in which its miraculousness consists. The Quran was revealed in the Arabic language and remained rooted on its foundations. However, its uniqueness inheres in the way in which it went beyond the existing Arabic language, surpassing the limitations of its terms, structures, idioms, formulations, images, and internal relationships. So pay attention. Surpassing the limitations of its terms, structures, idioms, formulations, images, and internal relationships. That is what Dr. Ahmed Bassam Saeh is talking about. And then he goes on to explain this, that this is what he's calling the new language. Not that he's saying that the Quran brought something other than the Arabic language. The miraculousness of the Quran consists in the way in which it developed the Arabic language's conventions and rules, yet without abolishing them, thereby opening the way for it to evolve and grow richer, and endowing it with dimensions and horizons, the breadth of which its speakers had never dreamed of. It's really the conundrum of the Quranists, and Ghulam Ahmed Pervez has tried this. By the way, Ghulam Ahmed Pervez is far more learned than Dr. Hany Atchan, far more. And if you guys are interested in these kinds of things, I urge you to pick up Ghulam Ahmed Pervez's book. Many of his books are translated into English, and pick up his Quranic Lexicon, Lughat al-Quran, which has been translated into English as Quranic Lexicon. And you'll see the same kinds of gymnastics, the playing with the roots of the words and everything, as Dr. Hany Atchan does. So this has really been the conundrum of the Quranists. Whenever they want to exegete the Quran according to their own ideas, to propagate their own ideas, their own theology, their own creed, they say it's a new language, it's locution, it's Abrahamic locution, or it's this locution, or it's that language, or this or that. It is Lisanul Arab. The Quran is in Lughat Arabiya and no other language. However, let us look at Abrahamic locution for what it really is. The Abrahamic locution is the term as it is coined by Dr. Hany Atchan, is basically a term for looking at the root words alone, the root word study, the etymological study of the Quranic words. And wherever he pleases and wishes for, he throws in the term Abrahamic locution. In Abrahamic locution, this is this, or according to our methodology of Abrahamic locution, this is that. What he's really doing is the etymological study, something that Ghulam Ahmed Pervez excels at. Guys, you need to pick up his book, Lughat al-Quran, Quranic Lexicon. Basically, the problem with this is when you go to etymology alone, you are taking language outside its primary purpose of nutq. You're taking it out from the primary purpose of nutq to mantiq, to logic. Nutq is saying of things, and then when somebody is saying things, the other is hearing it, sima, nutq and sima. The language is primarily nutq. It's uttering the words. That is how a language is learned. That is how a language is formed. Somebody listens to him, to somebody else. Progeny to progeny. It's not mantiq, it's not logic. When you want to inject your own thoughts into a text, you always go to the roots. You always talk about the language alone, in seclusion, without context, without really understanding the way the people who spoke that language at the time something was written used to understand it. That is the way This is actually the way of tafsir batiniya. This is how it began. I'll come to that in a minute later in this video. But very quickly, language is nutq al-mutawatir and it's sima al-mutawatir. It's tawatur bis-sima. The arbitrary nature of language begs its learning through tawatur bis-sima. So this is a major point of departure from established tradition. When you do away from nutq al-mutawatir, from this quality, this basic function of the language of nutq, and take it into mantiq, you try to insert your own logic into it. No doubt you'll have to do away with all the established tradition, with all the ma'ajim, the dictionaries, the lexicons already available. You'll have to do away with these in order for you to be able to do this to a language. And this is tahrif. You're doing tahrif in the Quran. You're distorting the ayat of the Quran. Now, from the region that I come from, there is a very famous scholar from my region called Mr. Ghamidi, Javed Ahmed Ghamidi. He belongs to the Farahi school of thought, Farahi and Islahi school of thought, and he has refuted this thoroughly in his lectures. Unfortunately, all of his lectures are in Urdu. So maybe I could find one that has subtitles, English subtitles, and I'll share its URL. But you can search Javed Ahmed Ghamidi on the internet, on YouTube, and you'll find many of his videos. And this has been thoroughly refuted by him especially. Give the credit where the credit is due. I don't agree with manhaj of thought of Mr. Ghamidi, but give the credit where the credit is due. So this term, Abrahamic locution, it really does not serve any purpose sorry, other than promoting the concept that Dr. Atchan has borrowed from his Quranist predecessors, the ta'wil of the Quran through looking at words' roots alone. That is what Dr. Hany Atchan is doing. That is something that Ghulam Ahmed Pervez did. So without going further into the depth, there's a very interesting comparison between these two, between Ghulam Ahmed Pervez and Dr. Hany Atchan. Ghulam Ahmed Pervez's thought, it revolves around the systems of power, the political systems of governments, and the hierarchy inherent in the socio-political the current socio-political situation of the world, if you like. Well, edging at the Marxist thought. Whereas Dr. Hany Atchan's thought and revolves around, and his central theme is the understanding of the scripture. So if you go to Ghulam Ahmed Pervez's work, you'll find that he tries to exegete each and every verse of the Quran in these terms. When you go to, in terms of power play, in terms of establishment of government, a just government, an ideal society. For example, Jannah for him is an ideal society, and Hur are the female inhabitants with non-malevolent intellect. Ain, he translates as their intellect would be non-malevolent. This is just a little taste of his distortion. Little taste. Dr. Hany Atchan, on the other hand, Dr. Hany Atchan would go and actually exegete all verses according to his thought, his central idea, which would be the understanding of the scripture. Just for a minute or two, if I can take just a minute or two doing this, just to give you a taste of how Ghulam Ahmed Pervez did the exegesis of the Quran. Surah Takwir, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Idha ash-shamsu kuwirat wa idha an-nujumu kadarat wa idha al-jibalu suyirat wa idha al-'isharu tilat. Look at how Ghulam Ahmed Pervez does an exegesis of this surah of the Quran. Dr. Hany Atchan is not bringing anything new to the table. This kind of methodologies have been used by the Quranists since the birth of their firqah, since the birth of their sect, since the birth of their movement. So, إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُبِّرَتْ, and I'm going to read the translation, the exegesis of Ghulam Ahmed Pervez. Sometime in the future, when man-made socio-economic systems would be replaced by the Quranic order, the revolutionary conditions at that time would be such that the rule of monarchy would be eliminated. In the footnote, he further says, at the time of the Quranic revelation, the largest state in the neighborhood of the Arabs that had monarchy was Persia. Their flag had the sun on it, just as the symbol on the Arab flag was the moon. In this verse, although the sun has been mentioned, it implies the monarchy which the Quran had been revealed to eliminate. The system was eliminated by the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions, but it was re-established. These verses refer to a forthcoming era when monarchy will again be eliminated. The other indications of that era resemble present-day life. It is just possible that the enormous changes taking place today are a prelude to the Quranic system. And it only gets better. وَإِذَا النُّجُومُ كَدَرَتْ, and their small satellite states would collapse and scatter. Their luster and power would fade away. وَإِذَا الْجِبَالُ سُيِّرَتْ, and the nobles and chieftains who stand like mountains would be drifted away from their places. So Nujum are smaller satellite states, and Jibal are the chieftains and the chiefs of the tribes who stand like mountains would be drifted away from their places. وَإِذَا الْعِشَارُ طِلَتْ, and the means of travel and transportation, for example the camels, which at present are very important, will become obsolete. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وَإِذَا الْوُحُوشُ حُشِرَتْ, and uncivilized tribes and undeveloped nations will also adopt a collective social life. وَإِذَا الْبِحَارُ سُجِّرَتْ, and transportation across the seas will increase so much that the seas, would appear to be all filled up with huge habitations developing on the shores. You're enjoying this? وَإِذَا النُّفُوسُ زُوِّجَتْ, when habitations all over the world would start intermixing. وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ, and when, now pay attention, look at the exegesis of Ghulam Ahmed Pervez. And when all the girls for whom no one cared and who were buried alive by society will ask about the crime for which they were slain. This is when women will be given their due rights. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. So, إِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ, on that day of judgment that Allah is saying, the girls, the innocent children, female children who were buried alive by the Arabs, they will be asked, بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ, which crime were you punished for? Why were you slain? For which crime were you slain? I mean, subhanallah, this azim verse of the Quran, completely butchered. This is tahrif al-Quran. This is distortion in the Quran. وَإِذَا الصُّحُفُ نُشِرَتْ, when information systems shall spread all over. I was in fact talking to somebody, and I just remembered this, and this young man was greatly inspired by Ghulam Ahmed Pervez, and I kept asking him again and again, what is the basic thing? What is the gist of it all that you are inspired by. And one of the things he said, look at the exegesis by the Allama, Ghulam Ahmed Pervez. He predicted internet in his exegesis of the Quran. وَإِذَا الصُّحُفُ نُشِرَتْ, information systems shall spread all over. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وَإِذَا السَّمَاءُ كُشِطَتْ, when celestial bodies will be unveiled one by one, the conditions prevailing over there would be discovered. وَإِذَا الْجَحِيمُ سُعِرَتْ, then the working of the divine law of mukafat will also be accelerated, because at that time the system in which everything is decided according to the law would have been established. Accordingly, for the guilty, the blazing fire of Jahannam will flare up more fiercely. There it is a metaphor, Jahannam. وَإِذَا الْجَنَّةُ أُزْلِفَتْ, and for those who follow the divine system, the heavenly society shall be brought nearer. I mean, I don't know what else I can bring you to show you clearly that Dr. Hany Atchan is a Quranist. He's working within the Qurani thought and processes. This is the Quranist's thoughts and methods. This is just a taste. For example, if we go to his Lughat al-Quran, let me show you something very quickly from his Lughat al-Quran, just to tell you how these guys, the Quranists, do the etymological study of the words of the Quran in order for them to be able to, that they become able to push their own agenda, that they'd be able to do their own ta'wil of the Quran. This is now volume 3 from Lughat al-Quran, page 112 of 336. In the under the heading of Ain Ra Shin, Arsh, says Al-Arsh, a member of something, or a pillar supporting a roof, or the roof itself, or any other support on which a roof rests. Raghib has said that Al-Arsh is used for anything with a roof above it. The plural is Urush. It is also used to mean a king's throne. Thus, this word came to mean government or authority and kingdom. And then, وَكَانَ عَرْشُهُ عَلَى الْمَاءِ وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ. While doing the exegesis of these two ayat, after listing the judhur, the etymological derivatives, he comes to the exegesis of this ayah and says, this means that the essence of the physical life is water. This is corroborated by modern day research, which says that there can be no life without water. Therefore, when the Quran says that Allah's throne is on water, then it means that He has control over every living thing through His laws. Allah's control is also working in the outer universe according to His laws. He has made laws for everything, and none can go against these laws. In the human affairs, the revelation is provided as a source of external guidance as an option. It is up to us to accept it or reject, and then live by the consequences of our choice. So he is also linking Arsh with the revelation, with the understanding, like Dr. Hany Atchan does. Another example, very quickly, again from his Lughat al-Quran. This is page 36 of 211 of volume 1. Again, this is the English translation. So, English translation, volume 1, page 36 of 211. Adam. Ibn Faris says that it means love, harmony, compatibility. Admatu, closeness, in agreement, to live together, or intermingling. Going to the root derivative. Adamtu or admatu, to mix together, to be in agreement, to love each other. And then he goes on, there are other juzur. In reality, it means something which is eaten or goes together. with bread, i.e. curry, vegetables, etc. Al-adma, wheat. Then he's listing the judhur, the derivatives. Al-adma means wheat. It also means the inside of the skin. Idam is such a person by whom one can recognize his tribe. And Adami, the one associated with Adam. We generally think that Adam, who was expelled from heaven, was a messenger. The Quran does not support this assumption. From the various places in which the Quran mentions his tale, it appears that he was not a particular person, but a symbol for the human race. In other words, the tale of Adam is not about a particular pair, but the tale of humans themselves, which the Quran has presented in an allegory. Page 36 of 211, volume 1. So really, what new Dr. Hany Atchan is bringing to the table, except for coining a term here or coining a term there? Now, I have established something very important here, so you guys need to understand this. You guys need to understand that Dr. Hany Atchan belongs to the tradition of the Quranists, no matter how much confusion he tries to throw out there. For example, his video in which he gives advice to both the Quranists and the Wahhabis, the Salafs. And so that's really, he's creating confusion. He's trying to sound like he's not a Qurani. He's giving advice to his Qurani brothers, so he's outside the framework of the Quranists. He's really confusing the masses. I think one of the reasons for this is, if you come out and say you are a Qurani, you already lose like 80% of audience. The 80% of Muslims who are Sunnis are around about that, 69% plus. Muslims are Sunnis. You know, they're not going to listen to you at all. They're not even going to click on your videos. Because, like I have shown you, by the consensus of Ummah, primarily by the consensus of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, you guys are kuffar. So I think one of the reasons the Quranists don't come out and say this outwardly and deny that they are Quranists, because they're afraid to lose their audience. But really, Dr. Hany Atchan creates this confusion, and you guys should do away with this. Now, the question remains, why is he doing what he's doing? Why the Quranists are generally doing what they're doing? Now, this is really the tafsir batini that was started with al-Mu'tazila and was picked up by the Rafidiyya Shia, like the Qaramitiyya and the Ismailiyya earlier on. And then later it was picked up by Ithna Ashariya Imamiyya, the 12er Shias. And really, Kulaini perfected it in his Kafi. There are 4 primary books of 12er Shias called Al-Kutub al-Arba'a. One of them is Kafi. But really, I talk about this in detail in my previous lengthier video. And if you are interested in knowing about Tafsir Batiniya, you should go and have a look at that video. But very quickly, even later Sufiya, they picked up on Tafsir Batini. And they did exegesis of the Quran in Batini terms. What is Tafsir Batini? What is the Batini school of Tafsir? They basically do away with the zahir of the ayat, the apparent of the ayat. Their usul, their asas of ta'wil is that the apparent is not important. The meanings that come across from the apparent lingual structuration and skeletal properties of a given verse of the Quran is not what is intended. In fact, there are deeper meanings, the batini meaning, the hidden meanings, which are really al-murad, which are the real meaning, and which are the intended meaning, which are intended by the divine. The Zahiri meanings are not really the meanings that we should look at. And so every Batini school has their own methodology to support the so-called hidden meanings in the verses. The Quranists, they make the etymology basis of their method. Sufiya make every verse of the Quran about their shuyukh. The Shia make every verse of the Quran about Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, or the Ahl Bayt salamullahi alayhim. And so really everyone doing tafsir batni, has his or own or her own method to try and do a ta'wil, do a tafsir bi mujarrid al-ra'yi, from intellect alone. This type of tafsir is called tafsir bi ra'i al-mujarrad, by the intellect alone. And they all have their different methodologies to try and justify what they're doing. But really, this is a lengthy subject, and I don't want to go into more detail into this. Maybe I'll make another summary video from my lengthier video, but for now you can go to that video of mine and the previous video and look at it. Before ending this, let me also mention that a true falsification test has been conducted in the previous video. If you are interested in seeing this true scientific falsification test in action on Dr. Hany Atchan's own exegesis, you can look at part 3 of my video. The video that I'm talking about, the lengthier video, is titled Season 1, Episodes 39 to 40, Dr. Hany Atchan, Marvelous Quran, Organic Quranic Methodology. So you can have a look at it. In his latest video, in Dr. Hany Atchan's latest video titled YT92, The True Story of the Famous Qareen, he tries to put words into the mouths of his critics while trying to term his distortions and manipulations as evidence from the Quran. So whatever his ta'wil is, whatever he feels like, whatever meanings he feels like assigning to the ayat of the Quran, he very easily terms all of that as the evidence from the Quran itself. Thinking that we are naive and susceptible. And then he says his critics cannot provide an alternate explanation. He accuses his critics of naivete, of ignorance. Now I'm a little confused because the verses that he's referring to, do they need an alternative explanation in the first place? Maybe he's assuming that his critics reject the supernatural in Islamic theology just like he does, but cannot come up with another rational explanation. That would be the only reason why we would be required to provide you with an alternate explanation. We believe in the zahir of the Quran. We believe in the apparent meanings of the Quran. Unlike you, we don't move away from the zawahir of the Quran, from the zahir of the Quran, and say that the apparent meaning is not intended here. You assume that your critics believe in fables and mawdu'ats and Israeliyats. It's a pathetic state of affairs, Dr. Atchan. I really expected much better from you. But unfortunately, it is not the first time that I've been disappointed. The kind of pseudo-intellectual scholarship that you bring to the table, it is to be expected. And it has been thoroughly refuted, times and again. And I don't feel there is a need for further inquisition into it than what has already been established. And I have established base principles today. Simply calling something herd mentality does not hold any water until you show specifically how it is wrong. But I know you don't deal in specificities when it comes to your criticism. You try to evade and generalize. And so let me end this on this simple thought for everyone to ponder over. Why is it that the doctor is afraid of discussing his ideas and methodology with others? I mean, in this age of live streaming, in today's age of technology, in today's age of YouTube being filled with live streamers, this is really unfathomable. This is really unfathomable. I hope you are as excited as I am. Trying to copy Dr. Atchan. I hope you're as excited as I am. You're as excited as I am. We've been able to get to know about these facts because we use a specific kind of methodology of calling a spade when we see one. I hope you are excited. What to do with this knowledge? What really to do with this knowledge? Be cautious. One thing you should take away from all of this is don't fall for every Tom, Dick, and Harry, and don't be deceived by the tricks that people play on each other. Inshallah, bi'awnihi ta'ala, I intend to post more sections of this lengthier video in future. And so if you guys are interested, hit me in the comments. Or not, it's a free world, subscribe to the channel or not, it's a free world, it's your choice. But be good no matter what you do. Take care of yourselves, your parents, your progeny, your townmates, people living around you, people living in your town, people living in your city, people living in your country, and people living in your world. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.